Hey, how are you? And welcome to Content is Profit. Today I have a special episode. This was a session that we did with our partners at Capsho and Deirdre, and they asked us, what are the 3 viral types of clips that you guys have seen, produced, whatever you guys have come around, and this is the result of it. So it is a very interesting show that they're running live on YouTube. You can go check them out, but at the same time we talked about all the frameworks that people are using today and the different things that you as an entrepreneur, as a creator, can do today to actually gain a lot of traction with your content. And you will be very surprised that it maybe might not be what you think it is. So I hope you enjoy, and let me know if you want more stuff like this, more collaboration with some of our partners, and some examples of different content inside of Content is Profit. And with that, enjoy the episode.
So let's get into it. So we are talking about the 3 short form videos that is getting attention right now. So can you take us through, because I know you do, I've mentioned this before, you do a lot of experimenting. I see you and Fonzie putting out content constantly, and I see what you're doing because I can see the trends and the things that are happening. But can you talk us through a little bit about your process of how you do this, and then we can get into what you're actually finding is working?
Yeah, definitely. So we are big fans of creating your own processes, right? Like we're big fans of creating your own content ecosystem, right? And it kind of goes back to, we try to mimic and we try to copy, I guess, or model after a lot of what the influencers were, saying or doing at the time. So for us, 5 years ago, it was like Gary Vee or people like Ken Yoon, or even influencers, and business owners like Russell Branson, right? They will put these books and the things like, this is the secret recipe. You got to multi-purpose all the content, and you got to document, and you got to do all this. And there's like different formats that people were trying at the time, and we're trying to mimic, and we're trying to model that. What we didn't understand was that they had big teams behind them, that they had big resources, that they had all this. So we came back and we're like, okay, what? We look past that film, like that. There's like a layer that we look past that layer, and then we started thinking about how can we grab some of the things that are working for them and applying them to us today, right? So we had to do like a really big inventory and like, what are the things that are at our hand available at the moment, right? At the moment we were renting like a little office, so we had a little corner space. We had our phones, like we didn't have fancy cameras, we didn't have fancy recording equipment, we have photography things. So like, what are the things that I have in hand today so I can start creating consistently? And why consistently? That was like the one trait that we saw in every single creator that we studied, and we studied more than 100 ones at the time. We're like, what are the things that they're doing that does? And every single person was being successful in their field with a different type of content, which was really interesting, right? Because every single person was saying, this is the content that works, this is the content that works. But every single person had a slightly different type of content, right? Gary was documenting 24/7, right? We had the streamers that were streaming for 8 hours a day. Then you have the YouTubers with like highly engaging videos. At the time, short form content was not a thing. Russell Brunson was doing a lot of webinars, right? Like they had people like Steve Larsen, for example, doing their own crazy, takes on marketing things. So every single piece of content had a place in this like online world. But the one thing that every single person was doing was like they have been consistent for a long period of time. Some of them even 9 years, 11 years. I mean, right now I'm like hooked on this like incredible YouTube / podcast for comedians called Kill Tony. The guy has been publishing the same show formats, right? It has evolved in production quite a bit for 11 years. And now it's a surprise that a lot of people are discovering it now because it's great, but he's been doing it for 11 years. So we really started focusing on consistency. How can we be consistent? And from that moment on, we decided on, okay, this is our own process to try to model and try to adapt in our margin, our own personal margin, our own company margin, on how we can grab those elements of things that are working and test it out. So throughout the years, one of the rules that we have inside of our content is like we have 80% of that content that's produced. For example, for us is our podcast and our clips on the short form. These 80% of the things that we can do, that we know how to do, that we can get better every single day, kind of carving our own path, right? And then 20% of that is experimenting and testing new things and trends that are happening in the market. So I think like that kind of opens the door, and I want to encourage every single person to start thinking about how can they adapt it to their own process.
I love that. The whole like 80-20 rule of, 80% is just, it's almost like the blue chip stuff, right? Like, build those foundations and just get really consistent. And then
Yeah.
20%, hey, let's experiment. So talk us through your experimentations. What are some of the things how do you, I guess, even kick off like, how do you go, oh, I think this is something that's working. Let's try it. And then how long do you give yourself and how do you actually settle on, oh, this is something that's working, which is kind of going to lead us into through that experimentation. What are the three that you are finding is working right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have to bring context of like, first of all, who is the creator, right? Like, are we talking about understanding? Are we an entrepreneur that is trying to educate? Are we a content creator that's trying to entertain? Just recently, this has been a theory that we've been testing inside of our own team and kind of battling with, right? With our own show is like, are we a lot of people call edutainment, right? There's different categories. You have education, you have entertainment, and then you have edutainment. And edutainment is kind of a mix of both that I'm trying to teach you while I'm trying to entertain you. And our theory, what we would be thinking the last couple of years, has been that doesn't work. We've had a lot of friction because, like, if I'm trying to have fun, I'm trying to teach you something, and it's almost like when I'm at home and I'm like trying to say something serious to my wife or my kid, but then I crack a smile because maybe I throw a joke. They don't take me seriously, right? So I'm entertaining at home, but they don't take me seriously because they think it's a joke. So that also translates right into the content creation process where we're trying to like make this like crazy show with jokes and then we're trying to teach business lessons, for example, right? And then there was just a lot of friction there. So the first thing is like deciding, are we educating or are we entertaining, right? And both of them can have space in your platforms, right? There could be a moment for education, there could be a moment for entertaining, right? And again, this is part of our own personal point of view. And like I said, every single person might have their different point of view, but you could attract maybe both. Maybe you have an element of entertaining inside of the same show and then you educate, right? Like this is a really good example, right? And I would love to see that what happens with the show moving forward. We have an element of entertaining at the beginning and then we're like educating at the back end, which is fine, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be like, do we have those moments defined? So if you as a creator and entrepreneur and trying to teach something, like for example, we deal with a lot of customers in the real estate market, right? Or in the investment market. It's really interesting to see like, well, we're not going to be doing a comedy show on that side of things, right? Because it might be different. It might not resonate with the people that we're trying to teach. So understanding like who is that person that we're trying to serve and how can we serve them, right? We make a promise with our content, which is delivering information, providing them with a win. Are we delivering on that promise or are we just surfacing it? And I think like that has been our personal point of view with our show because we've been trying to like we've done more than 500 episodes and for us we prioritize those relationships, right? But on the clips, what are we sharing on these clips? Are those funny moments or are we actually providing value for that? So the clips for ourselves, they're designed to create a moment of laughter because that's our energy at the same time, but at the same time create a hook so people can go into that. So energy has been the feedback number one that people share with us. We're like, we love your energy. We're like, perfect, we use that as an element to bring people into the show, and then the people that resonate with that stay and listen to the educational part. So that has been pretty interesting. And obviously there's like topical trends that you see in every single platform, right? If you look at Facebook Reels or YouTube Shorts or Instagram, things that are happening in there, famously, when TikTok came up, everybody's like, well, I'm not going to dance. I'm a business owner. I'm not going to dance. But that was the trend that was happening at the time. Everybody pointing at the things like, this is step 1, 2, 3, 4. And, you might grab some traction because that's the trend that's happening at the moment. So what happens is like people associate that what they've saw, that what they're familiar with in one side, they connect you with that and then you have their attention, which is really what we want, and then you can then deliver. So that's why people are doing it. Now the question is, are you willing to do it? Are you willing to actually do the thing as a creator, right? So some people will say never, some people will say yes, let's try it out. And that's where that 20% comes in. Like, what are you as a creator or as a business owner, as a are you comfortable with? Maybe that's not the vehicle, but maybe you can try a different format of podcast, of YouTube show, for example, that you resonate more. And then what are the trends that are happening on that platform that you really feel comfortable creating, right? So those elements, I think, can help move the needle forward, and then we can start honing in like what type of content can we be looking at to do this thing.
Wow, that is so good. I do actually remember I used to do the pointy things. I mean, my dancing is pretty terrible. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, I apologize to all the people who had to watch any of that, any of my past content. Okay, let's get into it. I cannot wait. Can we? How do you want to do this, Luis? Do we want to just go like short form video number 1? Number 2, number 3, and can you talk to us about the why it's working, like what it is and why it's working?
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny. We can go through some examples too, but I'll say, I mean, let's debrief. Like, who is this for, right? Like, are we talking what type of content? Are we talking for business owners, content creators? Are we doing for entertainers? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, no, predominantly. So everyone here are entrepreneurs. So we're either coaches, consultants, service providers, and yeah, I would say more on the education side. So why don't we start with that?
Okay, business owner on the education side. So think about the environments or like the topics that we might be teaching, for example. So what are some of the platforms that we can be looking at to be doing that? So one that we're firm believers is obviously podcasting. So you're going to have long form content into short form. So for example, we're about to start working with an incredible person that they teach agency owners on how to increase their enterprise value through acquisitions, right? Doesn't seem like a very, entertaining type of content, but like, okay, how can we teach people how to do that, right? So what they're doing is like long form content, podcasts, master classes, events, right? And then from there, we're big fans of the clipping from those events, long form content to short form, because you're saving a ton of time, one, right? You already are delivering probably your best content because you're in front of an audience, right? Or you're talking to a guest, or you're talking to a conversation, somebody with a conversation on your topic, right? It comes out natural. You don't have to research it. You don't have to like read a teleprompter that sometimes is a lot of fiction for a lot of people. So clipping, we'll call those, your short form from that long form. So that's type number 1 that we see a lot of people doing because they're creating that long form. It's a great way to leverage, right? Number 2 is your awareness content, your like top of funnel content, where it's like, can I talk about a topic? And again, keep in mind, this is like talking head videos, right? Can I talk about a topic that's happening today and relate that with, something in my business, right? And this can be like specific topics. This can be lists. These are the 3 days these are the 3 ways that we edit podcasts. Way 1, 2, 3, right? Or these are the 3 things that I do every single day to be more productive, for example, if you're into that. Or, this is how you turn long format into short form content. First, sign up for Capsho, right? And they're going to give you amazing output to do that. So educational content on that type of thing. And then the last one that we've seen a lot lately, like this is pretty new, is like these crazy hook trends that are maybe real life situations that then people adapt. So an example of this would be, there's like this clip that's going around with 2 people carrying somebody on, to an ambulance, right, in this like little bed, and then both of them trip, and the person kind of falls to the side, and then it starts rolling. As they start rolling, there's a transition in the video, and then the entrepreneur comes out, rolling in the floor, standing up and saying, hey, we have this offer here, blah blah blah, right? So that's an example of a visual hook to their message, tagging with like a current trend that's happening, right? The other one that we've seen is like this motorcycle. They're running crazy. They're about to hit a wall, and a second they're about to hit the wall, it cuts, and the person, jumps off the wall and explains the content, right? So another example of virtual hook on those trends. So there's like, again, you have to be a consumer to do this. I am a big content consumer because we spot all of this all the time.
Wow. Okay. I want to almost work backwards because, you know, in a way what you did, which was really neat, was you went like, okay, lowest, it sounds like anyway, I might be wrong, but it sounds like lowest effort is type number 1, which is, yep, let's just use our long form content and create clips from them. And then highest effort seems to be type number 3, which is the hook trend. So let's start actually with type number 3 and work our way back up. What do you... can we either debunk or not debunk that what I just said? Is it a lot of effort to actually create these kind of videos, and what kind of goes into it from a planning perspective? Like, what should we expect in terms of the time that it takes to create these?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, let's really back, like, what will be your number one objective as a creator? I think we have to start there, right? And we talk about this in the publishing pyramid, where you have like your resources at the top, understanding that, like, what's the money I have? Like, what is the time available that I have? Do I have a team that can deliver on these assets, right? Then it's like, what is the capacity of that? Like, for example, when we first started, we did 45 days of live, but the live was 5 minutes of my day because we were busy executing on an agency level and trying to sell and doing all this thing and wearing all the hats, right? We only have 5 minutes a day to do that. So maybe you have capacity. And a lot of people fail at measuring their resources and the capacity. Just yesterday, we were on a call, and it's this person that wanted to build a home studio and invest all this money in a massive place with like high production value. But turns out that he had no budget to do that. So that was stopping him from creating. But it turns out that he had budget to go rent a studio in a different spot, right? So then why is that stopping us? Sometimes like that will, in our heads, it will stop us from moving forward. So based on these two things, right, like our resources and our own capacity, I encourage every single person to start doing that audit. And that's going to give you the answers, like, is that going to be easy for me to do, right? So, we talked in previous trainings where we have these levers where it's like, okay, what am I going to say? So in this specific example for the third one, right, like the one that you have the clip hitting the wall and then and then you as an entrepreneur doing that. So I don't think that's going to take a lot of resources, right? But you need some technical knowledge on how to extract that clip from the web, for example, right? So that might be on your phone, that might be on the web, in a clip's website, or whatever editor you might have, or maybe you need an editor to do this, right? So that's an investment. That's some time that you're putting into it. Then after that, it's like, okay, let me get up from my office and go to a wall or go to somewhere where I can actually film this, right? Maybe that will take you, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes if you're really picky, right? And then you have to like clip them together. Obviously, we have technology today, like your phones, right, that make it very simple to stitch those, especially those platforms. They encourage you to create inside of the platform. So they might even have a template for you. So it might be a 5-minute thing. But just in my specific case, for me, that doesn't work because the mental capacity to get out of a task or to get out of my flow to be able to go do that, except if I schedule it to record like 5-10 of those in one day, it's not worth the effort because I already have daily content going out from my podcast, for example. So you have to evaluate that on your own. So again, that's where that 20% of testing comes on. Be like, okay, this week we're going to do trendy videos. So what I recommend is like block off a time and be like, my goal today is to have 5 of those videos made because I want to have Monday through Friday schedule and ready to roll, or that I want to publish once a day. And then you sit down and you do that. But you have to measure it. Maybe for you, if you're experienced, maybe you can knock them out in 2 hours, right? Or 1 hour, right? But somebody that's beginning, there's going to be some kind of friction in order to do that. So I encourage every single person to do your own time study, to do your own resource study, and commit. Be like, okay, monthly or weekly, this is the output of content. I want to have one clip that I want to put out every day, and commit to executing that for a week. And you're going to learn a lot from that experience. Or you can tell your team, if you do have a team, be like, guys, I want one of these a week. Like, what are the things that we need to do? What do you need from me? And then you can start measuring that side, and you can do that 20% testing.
Oh man, it does. Yeah. I have so many questions, but I feel like I'm going to derail it. So I'm going to, I might come back to my question if we have time at the end. So then let's get into, so basically what we're saying is that with that, the third type of short form videos, which I think, did you call it the hook trend? You called it the hook trend?
We internally with our team, we call it like the visual hook trend, right?
Okay,
because
yeah.
like, if you see the structure of the videos, right, you have a hook which is designed to capture attention, right? and then you have your value in the middle, and then you might have a call to action at the end, or it could be like hook, call to action, value, right? It's like I grab your attention. Hey, by the way, sign up for Capsho, right?
Yes.
For example, right here,
Of
and
course.
then
Yeah.
we're delivering the value. So that how we see it in our process is almost like Lego pieces, right? We have this hook that goes here, then we have a call to action that we attach, and then we have the value, and then we have another call to action. Boom. Now, then that you put a vertical, and that's your script. So yes, on the visual hook, instead of a phrase of like something that like, hey, if you learn this thing, or this this trend will help you gain millions of views. That's a hook. And then people are like, wait, what? And then you can go explain it, right? It's just a visual hook because you're not saying anything. It's just a clip that you're using to capture attention. Why? Because people already have seen that clip. They related to it like, oh, I was entertained by that clip. I'm curious, is this guy gonna crash or is the guy falling? What, like, how long is he gonna roll? And then what happens is like you cut that and then you do something else. So you capture attention. Now here's the fun fact. Very interesting to see like what is the consumption rate of the after video, because maybe they're expecting something. So maybe the viewer, this is the tricky part, which is what we need to change. Maybe the viewer, if we look at the data, they might be feeling cheated because they're like, oh, I wanted to watch video number one, but now they're selling me a car, right? But then the person that is looking for a car is like, oh, I was looking for a car. Now this person is selling me a car. Well, that's great, right? So again, it's going to be very different for every single person. That's why it's so important to kind of know what's happening behind those videos and start testing it on your own business.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, Luis, we couldn't get the screen share thing working, but I know that you had some examples that you were willing to share. So maybe what we'll do is we'll grab those links from you afterwards, and for everyone who's on this live, we'll share the examples with them. Is that cool, Luis?
That's absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
we're just going to go through YouTube and see some clips that are happening right now, right? Because that's exactly what the feed that goes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. Okay, so now let's get into the second type of short form video. You call these the awareness?
Yeah, top of funnel awareness. So that will be, topical content, for let's say an entrepreneur, a speaker. I remember we had this lady, she owned like a local shop, right? And they sell like this little our aromatherapy things, right? And she's like, well, how do I create consistent content? She wanted a podcast. She wanted the long form. I'm like, we can do that, but like, what will be the objective of that? Maybe that's not the right type of content for your type of business. So what they started to do was educational content, right? And top of funnel awareness. Top of funnel awareness, we call it as in like the people that are not aware of you, they're going to start to learn from you. And then if they're interested, they're going to move to the next phase, which might be for a local business. Hey, let me go to Google and search their address. Or, hey, let me go to the store and do this. Or let me reach out on social media with some questions, right? So what they started doing was, one, the educational content, all from their phone. They had like an employee in the shop, and they would teach people about the things that they're selling. So they're like, hey, this little thing right here, what it does is if you put it at night and you turn it on, it's going to make you smell good. It's going to make your room smell delicious. And then you're going to sleep better. And then they're going to educate people like why they do that, right? But then the other one was they will grab different negative news of their industry, which was happening a lot. And then they will grab that information, which is top of funnel awareness for a lot of people because they're in the news, and then they will debunk that information with some new information. So it'll be like, hey, this is not right. Like they're talking about XYZ, they're throwing rocks and other elements of like, can we be polarizing, right? They're throwing rocks at that topic, and then they're saying like, by the way, this article right here, what it actually does is XYZ because there's these studies that show blah, 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 and then there's a proof of concept, and then they will put that out. So they will grab a topic that's hot, and then they would do a lot. They would like develop their value proposition for their content. So a good example will be comedians, right? Like comedians, how they write their jokes is they grab situations maybe of their life, or they grab situations of what's happening in the world and then do their twist on it, right? So as content creators, very similar. So in our specific case, every time the CEO of Instagram comes out with some news or an update on the app, I will go do that. Maybe I can place that. There's many ways on the production phase that we can, do that. But let's say I'll be like, hey, by the way, I just saw so and so talk about this new update on Instagram, right? That they're doing a shop. And what does that mean to you as a business owner? And then we can go into the content. So that's grabbing that trend. And normally those are very topical. So the speed of like from idea to creation to publishing has to be shorter, because if we wait, let's say 2-3 days or a week, that topic might not be relevant anymore, right? So that's why things like your phone, or just having like a setup where it could be like very fast to create, where the distance from idea to publishing is really fast, right? Or maybe you have a team that you can send that video and they quickly edit it and they put it out, right? It's so important. So Gary Vee, for example, he's known, we've actually studied his system, and what he does is like he has per platform 2 or 3 editors, right? On call every single day. And what he's doing, he's recording himself. He has a videographer, right, recording him in these situations, and they're sending that footage consistently throughout the day. And the editors are going and grabbing those clips, and they have full freedom on how it looks, how it feels, whatever. And then they send those clips back to his cell phone as an iMessage, and then he publishes from his cell phone. Like, he's always on the road doing those things, right? So what a dream setup. I will record, that's being transmitted to my team, and then I get it back. But not everybody has those resources. So how can we mimic something like that? It's like, okay, perfect. I see that spot of news. Maybe, I'm in my soccer game with my kid, and they're having a break. And if it's super important to me, which for me, if you see me with my kid playing soccer, that's what we're doing. Bad example for me. But anyways, you go and you record your thing, and then you publish it as a live, right? We have to be at peace with the production side of it. So it's like, imagine like a lever that we can move, like higher production, might be more time, more resources, lower production. But again, what we said at the beginning, quality of the message over quality of the production. So those clips might be even way better than a highly produced clip. So again, go back to the 80-20. Do what you do regularly, consistency, and then test that out. If it's something that works and grabs a lot of traction, perfect. Keep doing it until it doesn't. It will change.
That's super cool. And I had an idea and a question, or I want to get your thoughts from you, Louis. So, in Capsho Next Gen, a lot of the people who are even watching live right now are in Capsho Club, so they get access to beta, Capsho Next Gen beta. And as part of that, Capsho actually generates awareness style posts written, obviously, for either Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now, what are your thoughts on if we publish an awareness post, let's say on Facebook, and generally that's just like a one statement, unpopular type opinion. And so if we publish that, and let's say that gets quite a few comments, engagements, people being like, no, I disagree for these reasons, or I agree for these reasons, would that actually be a really good jump off point to create what this awareness short form video, which is like, start with that hook of this is the question, and then here are my thoughts on it?
Absolutely. We're always looking for indicators of something that, maybe attract opinions or engagement or different things, right? And we've seen, like, especially on Facebook, we've seen lately this crazy trend of like people just throwing rocks, unnecessary rocks. I saw, I think, a written post about a webinar and how this person was not good at delivering the webinar and blah, blah, blah. And it's like a full complaint post. And at the end, it's like, hey, here's how I teach you how to be engaged on a webinar. To me, I don't like that, for example. Like, and we've seen that trend. So we have to be very careful. Like, okay, do you as a creator or as an entrepreneur, do you feel comfortable with it? Does it follow the values of your company? Does it, serve your audience in a sense, right? But my guess is if you're publishing that, it does. So let's say for that awareness post, right, that you're sharing with us, perfect. That's an indicator. If it's above the normal, let's say you have random number, 10 on engagement, right? And then that is 100 on engagement. Perfect. That's a really good indicator that touched either a nerve or people are really interesting or what's really funny, like depending on the tone of your content. Perfect. Let's milk that. So that we grab that piece of content, as in not the physical piece of content, like the message of the content. Like, what do we say? Like, what do we say in that message? And then now, if we're familiar with other mediums of production, let's say you tested it out on a written form, can we do a clip about it? It's gonna do better. Can we do a full podcast episode about it? Can we do XYZ? So that's something that we do a lot, is like we look for like the top most engaged clips in our platform. So we look at YouTube Shorts, Instagram, and then TikTok, and it's crazy. Every single platform, same clip resonates different. So every single platform is never been the same across all three. And then we grab that, and then you can create topical content from your phone if you want, and do that, or you can just record a long form piece of content. So it's a great inventory to start testing, what's resonating with your audience. We found out, even though we, for the last 5 years, we've had an agency that specializes on clipping in long form to short form, people knew us more because of the podcast, and people were asking more for production on podcasts, for example. We ended up purchasing actually a physical studio based on that feedback. But it's because the content that we're putting out on podcasting was grabbing more traction than anything else. So that based not only a content decision, but also a business decision that turned out to be really good. So I think those indicators are really good to start grabbing information from the web and start to get to know your audience at a deeper level. If you want to speed this process up, right, onto this point, we talked about organic distribution, but if you want to speed this process up, you can put some paid media behind. A good example is there's a show called The Diary of a CEO. It's really good, long form interviews, right? And what they do with their thumbnails is really interesting. We did a full episode on this in our show where, they do the interview and then they test 30 thumbnails, similar visually, where it's like the title and the face on one side, but the title changes 30 times. And they run those as Facebook ads. And the one that has the highest click-through rate, that's the one that they put on YouTube. Super interesting. So again, team, resources, time, XYZ. But again, it's really cool tactic to find that out, especially with that principle that you just shared, Deirdre.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so Capshovians on here, you know what you need to do now, right? We've all been doing awareness posts. Find the ones that are outperforming and use that to create the awareness style short form video. And it can be literally as easy as just restate like say the statement and then what your thoughts are. Or you can even create a visual hook video where you are jumping out of a driving car and as you're shouting the statement, roll over.
You don't have to jump out of the driving car. You can just find a clip of somebody doing it. So here's an example. At the time of this recording, there's a movie in the theater called Fall Guy, which is really awesome, really fun. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's all about stuntmen. So there's a lot of content going around stuntmen because of the marketing of what's happening there. So a lot of those clips are grabbing traction. So maybe you grab one of those clips from the stuntman and then you put your message out there, right? So
yeah.
Different things you can have fun.
Love it. Okay, so let's cover off the first type of short form videos. Nerdy's umbrella's like, whoa now.
Yeah. No, we don't. I don't endorse this method. You don't jump off cars.
All right. So the first type is literally, taking the long form content that we're creating. So in our case, podcasts, could be a YouTube video. It could even be this live masterclass, which we might actually do to test all of this out. And basically finding the clips within that. So can you talk us through how do you actually think about the types of clips that you believe will resonate? Because we always need to have a hypothesis, where to start. What is your hypothesis when you're going through this process?
Yeah, and I love that you call that a hypothesis, because it's all really an experiment, right? Like what we're doing. So I'll set the stage in our show, because a lot of people think that we do the show for the audience that's listening first, but we also do the show mainly for us. Like our main objective is we want to meet really cool people in our industry that we know they're going to bring a ton of value. That's why Deirdre has been on. That's why, the people that have been there for a reason, right? So that's number one. Now, the part to that is like the content itself, like what we talk about is aligned with our business, is aligned with what we do as a service, right? And it's also providing value to our people, right? So, top of funnel for us, like the topics are like, okay, how do we figure out what to say on our content? How do we create it? How do we produce it? How do we market that? How do we manage that? Or how do we connect it to revenue? That's all. Those 6 things are like the 6 pillars of what we talk about. And there's going to be a representation of that in our content. So it's very general. The way that we approach our specific show is very curiosity based. So we have that as a loose, roadmap on the creation of the episode, but it could go completely sideways. We've had interviews that are really good, that people love, that we go very deep on personal side, because that's where the conversation went to. And that's what we found that works for us, to be able to create it consistently. Because if we do not create consistently, then there's no content to choose from. So again, that's what works for us. We've tried, structure episodes. We've tracked, different trends and different things, and we just don't get, as much enjoyment as you do. And for us, that's we're very big on that. Like, we have to actually enjoy it to be able to do it. That's just who we are. Maybe there's some people who are like, suck it up and do it, right? Well, maybe, but that's not us. So, but what happens is, like, just yesterday we had a meeting with our production team, right? And one of the feedback that our producer told us was, hey, when we're selecting these clips, we have some indicators for our specific episodes. Are funny moments where we're all laughing. Maybe it's a bad joke. Maybe, it's a reaction to something that Fonzie said or that the guest said. Obviously value points. So anything that can be delivered less than 3 minutes, as in like, hey, this is a specific idea. So for example, what are 3 ways that we can create content from our phone? Well, way number 1 is XYZ. If that falls within 3 minutes, then that's a rule that we take, and that could be a potential clip, for example, right? And then interactions, like quick interactions, like I ask a question, they answer back, Fonzie goes in, and then those are like the indicators. We also track a sheet of what we feel is interesting during the interview. So we are able to do this because there's 2 co-hosts. So I'm always taking notes, and the guest knows it. So we're having a conversation, and they say something that I feel like it could help our audience, because I'm connected with our audience, because we're having conversations. I'm having sales calls every day. So in my head, we know what the problems are. And then if that person says something about it, I just mark it down with like exclamation mark, and that could be a clip that can go out. So we started building this indicators list inside of the content itself. What our producer told us yesterday was that one of the brothers, I'm not going to say who, extends too much on a question. So for her, it's really challenging to grab that question and the answer of the person within 1 clip. So this is a feedback opportunity, it's a learning opportunity. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we make better questions, shorter questions, more direct questions, so we can, so we're able to clip those, right? Based on the feedback of our producer, which we did not have for a lot of years, right? It was just us doing the thing. So that means, what does that mean? That means it's less work on the editing side, because they don't have to like chop off different things. So we're optimizing the process. It's like we have like this ball of things that we've been able to contain, and now we're like cooking it, and we're putting pressure on it to make it a little bit better and more solid. And then that process is what we can replicate 2 or 3 times a week, every single month.
That is so cool. And what you actually touched on there is, we talk about it as this is a learning process, right? Like, I have also on my end had many learning processes or learning moments where my team have been like, yeah, Deirdre, you just have to conduct better interviews. or they're like, you just got to just do better. Yeah, but because this is actually really important, because what happens is that, even when we're doing our alpha testing of, as for people who maybe don't know the process, like we test everything first before we actually even get our developers to build it into beta. So we call that alpha testing. And even as we're doing that, we can tell that the really great episodes for clips are the ones, to your point, where it's like short, sharp value. Almost people talk, or I talk in sound bites rather than kind of like meandering. We'll get to the point type thing. So what's actually really interesting is that even though we're talking about short form videos and the ones that specifically get attention, it always does come back to, we also have to look at the original content that we're creating and actually uplift that. Like, if we can uplift that first, it actually makes the downstream outputs so much better, which is, I think, exactly what it is that you're saying.
100%. I think, I don't think, I believe this. Like, we see it every day. Most people don't go through the entire process to be able to discover that, right? Like, they don't go through a writing process. They don't go through a recording process. They don't go through the feedback process of that recording. They don't go through the editing of that. Then they don't go to the distribution of that, right? And I think there's a big gap in education. Like, we see it every day. People come into our studio and they're like, hey, expectations are like very out of the blue. They're like, I expect this podcast to go crazy. I'm like, well, what are we talking about? It's about cleaning services stories. I'm like, that is a very niche thing, which could also be big. We don't know. We have to put it out, right? Maybe it is a hit. I don't know. Like, we never know what's going to work. We just have to test it out. So either we don't have the resources to sustain that, or we don't have the consistency to be able to, endure, some of that. I heard one of the presentations, one of the masterminds that we're in, this person has been publishing content for a long time, and they've been doing a study on Netflix. And there's shows that are there on Netflix, for example, or Amazon Prime or Hulu, that have been going on for 6-7 seasons, and just now people are starting to find them, right? And it's interesting. They've been producing that, putting a lot of money investment into producing a show, and then 6 years later is where people find them, right? This comedy show that I'm totally hooked into, the guy has been producing it every Monday for 11 years, and I found it. My brother shared it with me 3 months ago, and I've been like obsessed, right? But there's gonna be a point where like it's exponential for that. So again, are we willing to endure that? Are we willing to make it work, right? We had a conversation with a real estate person. This was probably 2 or 3 years ago, that they came into the office and they were like, hey, we want to be the Mr. Beast of real estate in Orlando. And I'm like, explain to me what that is. And so they're like, well, for them was about the views, about the thing. And I think at the time, Mr. Beast had about 10 million subscribers, right? I think today, at the time of this recording, is 200 million plus. And I'm like, okay, and I'm familiar with Mr. Beast content. Are you willing to give out houses? Like, because that's what he was doing at the time. He was like calling in a pizza boy and he would gift the house, right? I'm like, are you willing to do this? And they're like, no. And then, are you willing to give out a car? Are you willing to do this? Like, that's the type of content that you're referring to. So maybe, those expectations could be, maybe you're a really good interviewer. Maybe you're really good at creating conversation and polarizing, comments or topics or things that people are attracted to. But again, I also seen caps in types of content, right? Like a YouTube highly engaged channel that have been going for 11 years is going to look very different to a highly engaged podcast, because it's not the same. It's a different type of audience. And that's the beauty of it. We can find it in these platforms. The platforms are not working against us. They're literally telling us, like, what are the things that we need to do? If you go to Facebook right now and you go to the creator section, there's a set of instructions on what to do step by step to get more reach. They tell you, they're like, do this, create 3 different types of content inside of the platform, engage every day, respond to your comments. Like, there's simple things like that. If we do those, the platform is going to reward you and your content is going to go crazy. That's why you see streamers, in there 24/7, right? And that's why they say, hey, focus on one platform first, mainly because of capacity and resources, right? We don't have the time to be in all of them. There's a way to do it. But again, quality of the message over quality of the production is what we're saying, helping our audience, whether that is entertaining or education, right? At this time. And if you put on those buckets, like, and if we continue to do that for a long period of time, it's going to help us over time.
So awesome. Okay, I know that we're at the top of the hour. So really quickly, if anyone wants the examples, because, Luis did do his homework and he was like, he had examples to show for each of these 3 types of short form videos. If you want those examples, can you could just comment #examples in the comments, and we'll make sure that we get that over to you. Thank you so much, Luis. Can you just remind us and everyone what it is that you do and how they can find you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, we have a show. It's on YouTube. It's on every podcasting platform. It's called Content is Profit. So you can come hang out with us there. And also, we are proud owners of a podcasting studio. This is where I'm sitting right now. So if you're in Jacksonville, Florida, you can come in, record your stuff here. And then we offer production services, not only in studio, but remote, for podcasting, and mainly the clipping. Everything that we talked about, we can help you create and move things forward on distribution, so you can really focus on your business.
So cool. And yeah, what you do is amazing. I love what you and your brother do. So thank you. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. And for everyone else, come. And Luis is actually going to do a very specific how-to training inside of the Facebook group. I think the people who I've seen who are on here live are already part of that group. But if you're not, go to Facebook, facebook.com/group/get clients from your content, because that training is going to be happening, I believe, next month. I mean, next month is already happening in like a couple days time, but definitely next month. We're going to be getting deep into the how-tos of creating some of these short form videos. Thank you so much, Luis. And for everyone else, you know what to do. You should be staying intelligently lazy. Bye.